Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of self-improvement through the Quran series. We will study a passage from Surah Mim Sajdah today. I'm just going to share my screen with you. These verses have a very, very emphatic lesson for all of us. And as you will be seeing, that they have a very strong message to give us. So starting off with the first verse, which is verse 32 of Surah Mim Sajdah, which is the 41st Surah of the Quran. The words are, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ أَلَّا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَبْشِرُوا بِالْجَنَّةِ الَّتِي كُنْتُمْ تُوعَدُونَ نَحْنُ أَوْلِيَاؤُكُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِي أَنفُسُكُمْ وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَدَّعُونَ نُزُلًا مِّنْ غَفُورٍ رَحِيمٍ. On the contrary, those who acknowledge God is our Lord then remain steadfast on it, disregarding all opposition. Angels shall surely descend on them for the assurance on the day of judgment before the verdict is passed, and say, Now, neither show any fear nor sorrow, and accept the glad tidings of paradise that you used to be promised. We remain your companions in the life of the world, and we are also your companions in the life of the hereafter. The paradise whose glad tidings we are giving you has everything in it which your heart will desire, and has everything that you demand as a means of entertainment for you from Him, who is very forgiving, ever merciful. So this first verse, it tells us how we live in the company of angels in this world. And similar would be our position when in the hereafter we would meet the Almighty, and the angels would greet us, especially related to those people. These greetings are actually related to those people who would succeed on the day of judgment, and they will be given glad tidings by the angels themselves. But then the most important thing which this verse mentions at the very start is that these are the people who acknowledge God as their Lord, and then they remain steadfast on this statement. So you see, this is something which is pretty difficult, and we can imagine that in the times of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was a huge thing to say that God is our Lord and then remain steadfast on this statement, because people were punished, they were persecuted, they were oppressed in all kinds of ways. We know what happened to Ammar bin Yasir, we know what happened to Bilal, radhiyallahu anhum. All of these people, and besides a host of others, they were subjected to immense torture. And the migration to Taif actually took place because Muslims were advised to evade this persecution by leaving the land, and they even went to Taif, and they went to for this purpose, to save themselves, only to be greeted with more fury when they went to Taif. So we have this very important message from the Quran, that people who call God to be their Lord and then remain steadfast on this. Today, this might not seem very difficult a thing, although in one respect it is still something very, very challenging. But specifically keeping in view what happened in the times of Prophet Muhammad and the way Muslims were treated when they just converted from polytheism and they accepted the message of the Quran and they started to believe in one God. All this, just one word from their side, that we believe in one God, and then all hell would break loose on them. And it is because of this that the Quran has promised them paradise, and it says that when they took the name of God, their Lord, and then they remained steadfast on it. Any trial, any tribulation, any calamity that befell them, they did not waver from their path. They started to follow the path of the God that had created them, and they followed the path of the messenger who was right in front of them. Then this was something very special. And as a result of this, you can see the verse gives these glad tidings to them, that this is no mean achievement. It is something which is extraordinary. And the glad tidings that they will be given when they will be entering paradise would be that these angels will tell them that nahnu awliyaukum fil hayatid dunya, that because you were pious people, because you were people who tread the path of God, we were with you, we were in your company, and you were in our company. And therefore, you have nothing to fear now that also you have now arrived before the Almighty and now you're about to enter paradise because of your good deeds. So we were your companions in the previous world, and we are your companions now also. This also gives us this very important information that all of us who are living in this world and we are leading pious lives, or at least trying to lead pious lives, we live in the company of angels. As these verses say, that nahnu awliyaukum fil hayatud dunya, that we are your friends, we are your we are people, or we are angels who are there with you, and as a result we pray for you, which is mentioned in at other instances in the Quran. And what a blessed company this would be, that we would lead our lives in the company of angels. And not only this, the Quran tells us that when we will arrive on the day of judgment, they would greet us that we were your companions in the previous world, and we are your companions here as well. And here you will find whatever your heart would desire. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِي أَنفُسُكُمْ. So in this paradise, you will find everything that you can think of, anything that comes to your mind, it will be fulfilled. So this is a huge favor on the part of the Almighty. It's like it says that Nuzulam min Ghafurir Rahim. This is the hospitality which is shown by the merciful, by the all merciful Lord, who is going to greet us, of course, and He is the one from whom all of us remained fearful in our previous lives, and now that we arrive before Him, He is greeting us through His angels and also sending us to paradise. And then the next thing we are told, which is found in the next word, is وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. O Prophet, you are calling them towards God, and whose words can be better than the person who calls people to God and does righteous deeds and says, I am the obedient. So the Prophet is assured here, and once again the verse shifts to this world. The previous verse was referring to what would ensue on the day of judgment, and once we are done with that, the verse returns to our own situation in this world, and it actually addresses the Prophet and tells him that you call people towards God, and there's no better a calling, no better a slogan than the slogan of that person who calls people towards God. So, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ. Who better, what better a call there can be than the person who is calling people towards God? And not only that, he is a person who does righteous deeds, and he says, إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, that I am from among the obedient. So this assurance is sounded to the Prophet that his call is the call which is actually the call of every heart. It is the best call that you can think of, and it's not just a verbal claim. It's not just calling people towards God and that's it. It is followed by righteous deeds. Amila salihan. Whatever we claim and whatever we intend is also expressed in our deeds. So وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, and then this very brief yet very concise and terse statement that, well, we have submitted ourselves to God. إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And then the verse goes on, it says, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ إِدْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. This is one of the best object lessons which is mentioned in the Quran to convert foes into friends. And the verse says, there is no doubt that these disbelievers of yours are now after evil, but you do which is good in response to evil, which means that you have to understand that in reality, good and evil are not equal, as the previous part says. And as far as these people are concerned, they are bent upon doing evil. But the Prophet is told that he should requite their evil with good deeds. And then he says, then the Almighty says, then you will see that the very person between you and yourself, there is enmity. It is as if he has become a bosom friend. Now, this is like a it's like a huge statement which is uttered here by the Almighty. It's like a it's like a manifesto for all of us when we lead our lives, and that is that whenever we are in this world, we face a lot of opposition, we face jealousies, we face rivalries, we face people who would like to belittle us, they would like to make us go through failures, and all kinds of rivalries people do face. But the Quran has given us a manifesto to rebut these rivalries. It has not said that you pay back in equal terms. What it has in fact said is something which is an eye opener. It says that you requite all these evil deeds with good. Whatever bad deeds people do to you, you reply to them in the best possible way. You smile at them, you accommodate them. If you are in a position to encourage and to promote them, you do so. You make yourself available to these people in case of hardship. So, to become or to convert foes into friends, this is what the Quran tells us. To convert foes into friends, that instead of being disappointed, instead of getting frustrated, instead of venting our anger, instead of paying back in equal coins, the Quran says, no, you repay every evil deed with goodness. If people are bad to you, you be good to them. It's easy to be good to good people. It is a real test of mettle to be good to bad people. And it is here that we have been told that all of us must try our best to connect ourselves to humanity. It's very easy to sever relations, but it is most difficult to remain connected with people. And the best way to do that, as you can see, is that to answer all their bad deeds with good ones. So, and the result, look at what the Quran tells us vis-a-vis the result. It says, فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. The person who was your deadly enemy, he's going to end up becoming your bosom friend, your close friend, your fast friend, because hearts do melt when they see people behaving in a very nice way. And that is what we have been told to do, that you have to conquer hearts, you have to vanquish souls, so to speak, through good deeds, through your nice conduct, through telling people and leading by example that, well, the best thing to requite evil is, instead of doing an equal amount of evil, you requite it by doing good deeds. So the next part of the verse, the passage that we are discussing, it says, وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ وَإِمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. So, of course, this is something which we would have expected the Almighty to say as a follow-up. And surely it is something that we would really cherish. So the words are, and remember that this wisdom is acquired only by those who are steadfast. And this wisdom is given to only those who are very fortunate. And if at some instance you feel temptation in your heart from Satan, seek God's refuge. Indeed, it is He who hears and knows. So, of course, to requite evil with good, to answer back in good terms, the Quran says this is not an easy task. It's a very tall order. And it says that this is wisdom, this is sagacity personified. And this can only be done by people who have the patience in them, who have steadfastness in them, who have resolve in them, and the ones who are very fortunate. Because people who have resolve in them, people who are fortunate, only they will realize that there is no use. It's not the right thing to do when you encounter adversity and evil and jealousy and rivalry, to behave in the same way. However, to be a person who repays every bad deed with a good one, you have to have that steadfastness. And the Quran says, وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا. Unless you have patience and perseverance, you cannot have this wisdom. So to repay people with good deeds, it requires patience. Because you see, when someone hurts you, your immediate reaction is that you would like to hurt him back, or at least say bad words to that person. But if you withhold yourself, if you restrain yourself, you exercise patience and perseverance, God says, and this is the key to convert all rivalries and all foes into friends. So this brings us to an end to this passage, and now I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, for a wonderful reminder about how we should conduct ourselves in social situations. Still waiting for any raised hands. Okay, we have one. Baran Nashur, you may have your question.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I had a question about the steadfastness that we have to have in our lives. What if there are certain situations where very extreme cases, such as like the Palestinians or the Uyghurs in China, that are literally getting oppressed for their religion? What must one do? Like if somebody.
So I think when people are suffering in other parts of the world, of course, when we look at them, our heart bleeds at what they are going through. But it is that if you're asking that what we can do while we are onlooking their miseries, the best thing that we can do is to make our own governments realize that we have to do something for them, maybe send financial aid, at the same time raise their issue in the United Nations. So some of the things that we can do, of course, relate to activism. And as far as people who are actually facing this persecution is concerned, this is an extreme form. I mean, these verses do not relate to that situation. These verses relate to normal life situations in which you come across such rivalries. This is another situation in which you are persecuted in the name of religion, in which you are, put to tremendous tribulations. So for solution for such a complex problem is also not that simple. So there are a lot of complexities which are working. There's world politics, which is being dominated by certain groups. And so we have to find a political solution. Any solution which relates to any extremism is not going to help. And we have to find a political solution, and the responsibility actually rests on all other countries of the world, whether they are Muslim or non-Muslim, because you see, oppression is something, or persecution is something which needs help from every quarter. And it is their responsibility that if some countries are insisting on their evil behavior, then they have to be checked. Or this is one area in which Islam tells you that if nothing else works, you can even use militancy or military means to curb such oppression, but of course only after every other option has been exhausted.
Thank you. Shehzad, we have a written question. They say that according to Surah Muzammil's Ayah 4, Awzid alayhi warattil al-Qur'ana tartila, in Tarawih they find that Imam recites the Quran very fast, and all the rules of recitation are not complied with because they are in a hurry to complete the whole Quran in Ramadan. So they ask if this is an open violation of the instructions of recitation of Quran.
Yes, of course, this is something that all of us are very concerned about, and because our imams, they are given this bidding. I mean, they are ordered to finish the Quran in a certain time period within the night as well, and in 30 days. So they have to do this, and this is because we have set our priorities wrongly. This is because this is something that we have already. We've crossed the bounds. The origin of this concept of finishing the Quran in every Ramadan, it has no basis and no authenticity. The thing that we have to understand is that you read the Quran comfortably and in a way that people are able to understand it as much as possible. And for this, they have to read it, of course, slowly and pay attention to the pauses as well. And I know this happens all over the world, and this is in the flagrant violation as well. So, all that we can do is maybe you just type this verse of Surah Muzammil and just present it to your own imam, or just present it to your mosque committee and tell them that, well, look what the Quran has told us, that we have to read it and understand it in a very measured tone. And on the contrary, this is something which is happening all around us. So it's like a collective calamity, I would say, that all of us are going through. And our responsibility is to tell these people or our imams, and they very well know themselves as well, that they have to be very careful in this regard. And I can also tell you out of experience that if you find out a little more, search a little more, there are mosques in which this directive is paid heed to, and they lengthen the time period of Tarawih. It becomes a longish Tarawih, but they read the Quran carefully and slowly. So I guess it could be, one option could be that you find a mosque in which it is read in a slow and measured way. And other than that, if that mosque is not near you and your nearby mosque is the one that you're referring to, then perhaps all that you can do is just point this verse out to them.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Ms. Madarimizi, please ask your question now.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. My question is not really related to today's talk, but my question was कि जो हमने नमाजें miss, the prayers that we've missed, in prior years, are we supposed to make up for them, or can we just go on from whenever we became a little more conscious and aware and started saying our prayers on time and promptly?
Well, I think my own personal view here is that we have nothing from the Prophet in this regard reported vis-a-vis making up for the missed prayers. So our scholars have become divided into various opinions regarding what should be done with these missed prayers. My personal take on this is that if these are, substantially large in number, and it is impractical for you to make up for those, I think all that you should do is seek God's repentance, and whatever nafils you pray, which are besides the obligatory rakats, you just make this intention in your own heart that these are the ones that you are praying as compensation for whatever you missed in your past life. You don't have to do anything extra except besides the mandatory prayer, which is the first prayer. Whatever else you are reading or offering, like the nafils or the sunnahs, you just make an intention that please count these in place of the ones that I missed.
Thank you. We have a written question. So that is a very short question, apparently, but it may take a long time. It says, what is takdeer?
Takdeer is, God's knowledge. That's all. We have a very, I would say, warped notion of what takdeer is, and it's not mentioned anywhere in the Quran. You would be surprised to know the way that we have come to know about it. The Quran, on the contrary, mentions prior knowledge of God of everything that we do, and that is all. So when we say that something is written, it's not a very accurate statement. The accurate statement about, regarding this issue is that God has prior knowledge of everything that we are going to do, but His knowledge is not going to influence what we are doing. This is a simple one-line answer, and if I may explain it a little more, it means that whatever we will do will be done by our own will, by our own free choice and free will. This is something that I would do or anyone would do, but whatever I would end up doing is in God's knowledge. So these are two independent things. God knows what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it out of my own free will. And this is, something that we have to understand. It is based on what the Quran says, that the Almighty is going to reward or punish us on the Day of Judgment. And if someone says that, why have you punished us? Then He will bring forth a record of all our deeds, and He will let us know that, look here, this is what you did out of your own free will, free choice. You did this and you did that, and you did something which was not becoming of you, not because you did not have a choice. You had a choice and you adopted for that evil way. So, and in a similar way, if people in the hereafter would question that, why, what have we done to deserve this place called paradise? They will be shown this record that, look, you were told to be good and you behaved yourself. And it's not that I have decided on my own behalf that I'm going to send you to paradise. You have earned paradise out of your own deeds. So it's basically God making sure that people, when they question Him regarding His decision on the Day of Judgment, it's not a decision which is based on His whims. It's a decision that we have earned through our deeds.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. We have another question, and that is related to the text that was used today for the talk. And they say, as it is generally said by traditional school of thought, that Yahud and Nasara can never be friends of Muslims. So in this scenario, what is the lesson from these verses? can they become our friends if we continue a good and polite attitude towards them? Kindly shed light over it.
So I have been discussing the aspect of the Jews and Christians which are found in the Quran in a number of my series which I have been able to teach. And I have endeavored to explain that the Jews and the Christians which are mentioned in the Quran are not the same Jews and Christians that we find today around ourselves when we are living in Western countries. So the Jews and Christians against whom the Quran speaks harshly of, like for example, it starts off by saying that you cannot make friends with them, you cannot pray for their forgiveness, or you have to wage war against them. These are all those people of the book, or the Jews and the Christians of the times of God's messenger, or the last prophet of God, who had denied him deliberately, who had known, who were convinced that he is the last prophet who was sent to them in accordance with the guidance provided by their own scriptures. And when he actually came out of jealousy and out of vested interests and thinking that why has he come from the Ishmaelites and why isn't he from our own lineage, they sought to arrogantly deny him. So as a result, they were punished in this world. God says that the enemies of messengers and their deliberate deniers are punished in this world. So this act of not making friends with them, or some of the other ones which I have just mentioned, were basically punishments meted out by God to such Jews and Christians. Today, this law is no more in play, because this law relates to the presence of a messenger and delivering the truth by his personality. So therefore, today, Jews and Christians, wherever they are, they still might be deliberately denying the truth, but we have no means to know that. In the times of God's messengers, we had the means to know that, and that was God informing his messenger. But today, since the institution of revelation or Wahi has been terminated, we can not have this knowledge. So we have to treat every single non-Muslim, Jew or Christian for that matter, any other non-Muslim as well, as a potential candidate to talk to him, to discuss religion with him. And he has to be treated. If one single word I can term, I can single out what we should call him, is that he is a non-Muslim. He's neither a kafir nor a disbeliever in the sense that we use in the Quran, or that we say he's a non-believer or a non-Muslim. And for a non-Muslim, we can make friends with them, we can talk to them, we can behave with them the way we do with our Muslims. Because as I said, the Jews and Christians of the times of the Quran were the ones who had intentionally denied, and they had been pinpointed by God also that, look, this is the group which is guilty of deliberate denial. And today, because we don't have any means to point out who is deliberately denying or not, so therefore, we just cannot behave in the same way.
Thank you, Shehzad. There's another question pertaining to the Taqdeer. Perhaps, is the time of death like birth has been preordained?
Well, the word preordained, again, I would not use that because you see, it gives you that sense of something being written down. What I can say is that on the basis of the Quran, that God has fixed a day of your birth and he's fixed a day of your death, and that is in his knowledge, something which is known to him. Everyone is going to pass away from the face of this earth, and God knows when this incident is going to happen for each one of us, and similarly is the case with birth. So this is basically a reflection of God's knowledge, and God's knowledge is something that we have to understand is something which is to which he himself is privy only. So it's basically the knowledge of the future, and everything which is going to happen in the future, including what's going to happen to us, and of course when we're going to pass away, this is something which God knows very well. So it's what we call is in something which is in the knowledge of God.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. I hope this must have explained. There's a question on the shortening of prayers during travel. If we were to travel later today, do I start shortening the prayer at home, or do I only shorten my prayer after starting my travel? Also, I've heard some people say that we can shorten prayers if we are traveling for non-religious reasons, such as work. Is this true?
Well, you see, the basic concept of giving concession in shortening the prayers is that the Almighty actually said in the Quran that every journey which is undertaken for jihad, the prayer is mentioned, or the shortening of the prayer is mentioned in the Quran vis-a-vis the journey which was undertaken in those times of battles. And the Prophet extended these journeys to all types of journeys, because the common thing in these journeys is the level of discomfort that all of us face. So it's basically an ijtihad which was done by the Prophet, seeing that basically the reason for the Almighty asking us that yes, we can shorten our prayers is there's a discomfort or the situation of danger that we might face when we are traveling, especially for a war. So on a similar basis, when we are traveling, it is the decision when we should shorten the prayer, whether at the start or in the middle, or for how long, or until when we should continue with these shortening of prayers, and what exactly is the distance. Every single question regarding this issue is governed by the status of discomfort that we may be in because of the travel. So it's basically an individual call. I mean, if people are traveling and they're traveling as a family or in a group, they have to ask themselves that are they in a position of discomfort, a discomfort which is the result of a journey. So as long as that discomfort prevails, they can shorten the prayer. And as I said, it's an individual question that each one must ask his own self or her own self.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. We have one last question, written question for today, and then we'll take one raised hand. Is it written in the Quran that Jesus salam would come again in this world?
It's not at all mentioned that he's set to return. This is an information which is apparently, allegedly mentioned in certain narratives of the Prophet, and they have an entirely different connotation, and also some of them have not been reported correctly. So this issue is not only not mentioned in the Quran. In fact, what I can say with reasonable certainty is that the way the Quran has mentioned the death of Jesus as a normal death is that he died a natural death, and not only did he die his natural death, but the circumstances which ensued after his passing away, right, until the Day of Judgment, they will ensue. There is a dialogue which is mentioned in the Quran that the Almighty would ask Jesus that did he ask his followers to worship his mother and to worship himself, and he's reported to have replied that, well, once I went away from this world, once you gave me death, kunta anta raqiba alayhim, you were their guardian. I don't know what happened. So this clearly tells us that Jesus would not even have knowledge of the fact that he was made a deity by the later generations. So how could we can even think of that he came back? Otherwise, this dialogue would become meaningless. This dialogue says that on the Day of Judgment, the Almighty and Jesus would be talking to each other, and Jesus would say, well, I don't know when I passed away, what happened to them. You know, because you are their guardian. So had he come back, he wouldn't have said these words. He would have said, well, yes, you are right, because when I went the second time, I saw them that they had made me a deity. So I think not only is his return not mentioned, in fact, what is mentioned goes very strongly against the fact that he's going to return.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Now we have the last question of the day. Samra Harun, you may ask your question now.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, my question is regarding the Qasr namaz. That is it okay that if we are away for like 10 days or a number of days, that sometimes when we are at peace, we are inside a house, we're not uncomfortable at all, we say the entire prayer, and when during the same journey, if we are in a rush or uncomfortable situation or outside or something like that, we shorten it. We
Yes,
read the
absolutely.
Qasr.
I mean, at times you could do the full one, and at times you could shorten the prayer depending on the circumstances. So this is the very reason that prayers have been. I mean, we are given this concession to shorten the prayer. So this discomfort is the whole reason, and as long as we have that discomfort, we can avail this discount.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, for all the talk that we could have and the answers that you provided to us. Thank you.